The opposition People's Democratic Party will be screening nominees for the vice presidential position today. A chieftain of the party who confided in reporters said 3 candidates were shortlisted for the position, not one as reported by some newspapers. According to him, those shortlisted include Delta State Governor Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, his Rivers State counterpart Nyesom Wike, and Akwa Ibom State Governor Udom Emmanuel. This came to the fore on Wednesday as supporters of Okowa and Wike disagreed over the party's VP slots. There were reports on Wednesday that a committee headed by the PDP Deputy Chairman, Ambassador Umaru Damagun, had on Tuesday nominated Wike as the running mate of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, when 13 out of 17 members voted in favor of the Rivers State Governor. The PDP spokesman, Debo Ologunagba, told reporters that the nomination of Wike remained a rumor. Meanwhile, the Rivers State Government House says Governor Nyesom Wike is still a member of the People's Democratic Party. In a statement, Kelvin Ebri, Special Assistant on Media to the Governor, called on members of the public to disregard the trending video on social media that the governor had left for the All Progressive Congress. Ebri says the video was part of a live interview on Arise News where Mr. Wike talked about the Ebonyi State Governor, Dave Umahi. In a tweet, Governor Wike says the 2021 interview was manipulated to give a false impression and insists that he remains a member of the PDP. Well, take a listen to what he said in the interview on Arise News.
I've told everybody who cares, what makes you a man is to be able to tell your people the simple truth. I'm leaving PDP today to APC because, one, PDP has not done anything for the South. PDP has not done anything for the State. PDP has not done this for my people. And I will catalog them. And then now that I'm going to APC, I'm leaving PDP to APC. See the reasons why I'm leaving PDP to join you. Tell me, are you willing to do all these things that PDP didn't do for me? What I mean for me, for my people, are you willing to do them? Yes, I'm willing to do them. Can you announce it to the public? Let them hear that this is why I'm leaving PDP. Because you say you will do this. Announce it to my people. If that is the case, then when I'm leaving PDP, you will see the senators will go with me. The House of Reps will go with me. The Assembly will go with me. Because it's for the interest of the state. It is for the interest of the region. Not when I go on my own to see how I can be protected and be politically relevant and try to share my inadequacies. Then I come out to say, I'm leaving PDP because this was not done. When you cannot practically prove it. So the reason for the fact is to say why he left PDP cannot be justified.
All right, a lot to talk about, Tundu.
Yes, I guess this is a reminder to be really circumspect about what you believe and what you share on social media or elsewhere, because you can see clearly that that video with Governor Wike was doctored for somebody's mischievous purposes. But it's good that it's been clearly clarified, debunked, whatever. With regards to the PDP's vice presidential candidate, still up in the air, but by tomorrow, either way, it has to be decided because that's INEC's deadline, unless INEC decides to extend it, which I doubt at this point. By 17th of June, every party has to know exactly where they stand with regards to the vice presidential candidate. We've talked about those 3 who you just mentioned, Governors Wike, Udom Emmanuel, and Okowa, at length this week and talks about their pros and cons, but it just, I guess, remains for the parties to decide. And that, for me, is what is most instructive here, that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, in the complete departure from his approach in 2019, is now allowing the party to, be the one to deliberate and choose the best person. It's a team effort.
Dr. Abati?
Okay, well, I guess the point about the manipulated video, which is the phrase that was used by Kevin Ebiri, the spokesperson to Nyesom Wike, governor of Rivers State, is an indication of how tough, how desperate the race to become the vice president of Nigeria has become. So you get a lot of demarketing. That's not the only video that is in circulation. There's another video that was put out there in which Nyesom Wike purportedly said he would never want to be, vice president to anybody, that he was just interested in the position of president of Nigeria. But the thing is to put everything in context. As regards the video, June, July, Arise interview, with Nyesom Wike, we have the record and it has shown. And on every other interview that he has had with us, he had consistently said that he would never leave the PDP because he was one of the original founders of the party. And it was the basis on which he kept criticizing persons like Bukola Saraki, who had led the party and then who came back. And he said he has this record of never ever leaving the party and that he had always committed himself to working for the political party. A point he repeated, even after he lost, the presidential slot, candidacy slot. So I think it's good that the correct records are available and that has been put to rest. But of course, the point is that at a time when you have three persons jostling for the position of vice president on the platform of the PDP, you can get all kinds of drama that will come up. The second point to make is that, yes, it's now clear that today there will be a screening panel for the shortlisted three persons on the platform of the People's Democratic Party as vice president. So we're told that the shortlist is Ifeanyi Okowa, governor of Delta State, Nyesom Wike of Rivers State, and Udom Emmanuel of Rivers State. Well, the significance of that is that it settles the point about carrying major stakeholders along. If there is a screening today, again, that will be about the fourth meeting that will be held by the PDP to decide on who can possibly become the vice president of the country. Well, I had some comments yesterday that I've consistently tried to make it clear that the position of the VP is not a big deal. Well, in Nigeria it is. I made that point. People should not overlook that or delete that from their memory. I made a point that it is important to the extent of balancing, to the extent of, having a sense of belonging. If you get a president from the north, you get a deputy from the south. That's the nature of our politics. But at the end of the day, there's only one president. That's my point. And it's a point that is theoretically valid, that is also practically valid, and maybe the extension of it, as the literature tells us, because there have been plenty of essays on the strength of that office, will be that we need to further strengthen the office of the Vice President of Nigeria. If it's so important, if that office is so relevant to the balance of power in Nigeria, then of course maybe we should take a second look at Section 5 of the 1999 Constitution, which makes the President of Nigeria a monarch. Yesterday, I did an assessment of the three candidates. I do not want to repeat myself. I do not want to go into that. What is certain, what we can hold on to, is that by midnight, today is Thursday, right? Or by tomorrow morning, we will know what decision has been taken on the two major sides of the aisle. On the PDP side, who has been chosen? And we must all be reminded of the factors at stake. Electability. What is the candidate going to bring to the table? Compatibility. You cannot go and bring two persons together who will not be able to work together, right? Education, that's taken care of. You don't need to be as educated as Ruben Abati to be president of Nigeria. You just need to be able to speak a small English. Okay, so these are some of the issues at stake. And then, what's the energy that you bring to the ticket? But at the end of the day, it's the candidate himself that will say, well, out of these three shortlists, I think I can work better with this person. For the rest of us, we're just doing analysis, but at the end of the day, there will be certainty.
So for me, two things. Number one, that Nyesom Wike's video just shows that people out there are spreading fake news. It could be from your opposition camp, it could be from your camp, it could be from anybody. And that's why this politics season we should be careful. Please, for any story you see, take them through a lens of websites like Claimbuster, These are verification tools to ascertain if a story is true or not. Take them through various, procedures like timestamp and the likes. Take them through various layers before you believe or report this news. Also, some of these stories can be generated using bots, specific accounts on Twitter and the likes. You can use a botometer to check if it's a bot-generated tweet to be able to push out there. So a lot of these things, will emerge. Truth has to be said, they are also using things like deep fakes. But I'm excited, at least people have not even started using things like deep fake in Nigeria, but that's not to say that it cannot come, and we should be careful. This one was just a part of an interview I was taken out and put out there. And as the political season wears on and on and on, more definitely will come. As regards the candidates, let's see what the committee will come out with. We've all, over this week, analyzed their strengths, their power. We've done a SWOT analysis on them. We'll see what they come up with. But most importantly, when they emerge, that's when we'll dig deep into the persona of these people. All right. Secretary of the National Peace Committee and Catholic Bishop of Sokoto, Matthew Kuka, is calling on political parties and their supporters to play by the rules in the June 18 Ekiti governorship polls. Kuka made the call in Ado-Ekiti, the Ekiti state capital, during the signing of a peace accord for political parties and their candidates that are taking part in the election on Saturday.
The 2022 Ekiti state governorship election gets underway this Saturday, and with the signing of the peace accord by political parties and their candidates, the National Peace Committee appeals to the contenders to prioritize peace.
We again appeal to all the political actors to ensure that they do not see the signing of the peace accord as a mere formality and a photo opportunity. May the friendship exhibited here follow you through the elections. And please note that at the National Peace Committee, we are exploring the possibilities of strengthening this accord so that those who sign it appreciate the weight, the consequences of their breaches.
The electoral body continues to give assurances of a free, fair, credible and inclusive election.
I wish to assure the Peace Committee of our commitment to transparent and credible elections. Working for the last 12 months, since June 2021, when we released the timetable for the Ekiti governorship election, it is inconceivable that INEC will undermine itself, especially on election day and beyond. I want to assure you all that the votes of the Ekiti people will count.
Some of the candidates expressed confidence in the ability of the Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct a free and fair election, while some expressed concern on election security.
I want to believe that having signed the accord, not for documentary sake, and having physical handshake with everyone, we hope for a better Ekiti and a peaceful one on Saturday.
I'm just pleading with the military and paramilitary and those who are supposed to protect lives and property to be up and doing. This time is so sensitive. Everybody is scared, and we're just praying that the fear would not, scare the electorate away from the polling units.
The Ekiti state election is the first governorship poll that the Independent National Electoral Commission will be conducting based on the provisions of the new Electoral Act 2022.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Moving on to business updates, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Oh, good morning. The Asian markets actually liked that very aggressive rise in US interest rates, the highest since 1994. But as ever, there are always complications. Yes, they liked that. They liked the fact that the Fed is bearing down, however quickly it's doing it or slowly it's doing it, it's bearing down on inflation. However, there are more COVID-related restrictions in mainland China. So that's really weighing down on those. The Nikkei up about 1.5%. Sony SoftBank doing quite well. Toyota up about 4%, actually. Now, as far as China's concerned, though, its major rival to Tesla, which is NIO, they're launching a new electric SUV. The fact about that is that it's got a 485-kilometer range, and the shares were up about 4% as a result of that. So that's always the issue, isn't it? Whether these cars actually going to go far enough, and also what happens when you actually get to where you're going and how do you charge them. But anyway, that's NEO for the moment, and they like all that. Overall, Chinese stocks beginning, as far as the market's concerned, to look relatively cheap and therefore worth having. We have heard this before, I have to caution, and I'm not in a position to advise anybody about investment, but I'm just saying this is what the markets are saying at the moment. In particular, Alphabet, for example, even though there's been a regulatory crackdown, it appears as though that's easing very, very slightly in China, and the growth thought to be healthy in companies like Alibaba. Alibaba, for example, on an $11 billion revenue right now, could be 25 billion revenue in 3 years' time. That's just one example. So let's turn our attention to the United States and that very, very aggressive interest rate rise, up 0.75%. The Dow actually like that. The futures are up as well. The Federal Reserve announced that actually, and also Jay Powell was very, very hawkish, and he also said that a 50 or a 75% basis point, i.e. 0.5% or 0.75% rise, might be also coming, most likely at the next meeting in July as well. So that sort of bearing down on inflation is something the markets have actually quite liked. Whether or not it's the right thing to do, and whether or not they're hiking into a slowdown of an economy, those questions are very big ones and still remain unanswered. I suspect they will for quite some time. I brought you the news a couple of days ago about the EU and the UK agreeing to stop insuring tankers which were carrying Russian crude oil. The United States has pushed back about that, and they're warning that there'll be a surge in crude oil prices as a result of that, and they're pressuring the EU and the UK to renege on what they've already promised. The details still have to be worked out, both from the UK and the EU, before that pressure from the United States actually happened. So again, this is a story which we're keeping an eye on. Netflix, do you remember we were talking a couple of weeks ago, I think, about their streaming services not actually up to scratch, up to what people were actually expecting in terms of revenue, and Netflix is actually looking at perhaps slightly more traditional way. Here's the thinking behind it. So once you've streamed Stranger Things, and once you've streamed Ozark, for example, which are the big blockbuster things from Netflix, what is there to do? Depends how old you are, I suppose. I mean, I have to say my wife and I quite like the fact there's a lot to watch on it, but a lot of people are now saying that people are going there for a couple of months and then walking away. That is the problem which Netflix is actually grappling with. Let's turn our attention to Europe and the EU. I told you yesterday that the ECB was thought to be having an emergency meeting. It did indeed have that. They're designing a new bond buying plan to tackle what I would call taper tantrums. This is a bit of an old phrase from about 10 years ago, but the fact of it is that once you start removing QE, quantitative easing, free money, and once you start raising interest rates from where they are right now, then a lot of countries like Spain, Italy and Portugal start screaming in pain. So the ECB met yesterday to try to come up with something that would stop these countries actually falling into debt and avoiding a debt crisis like we saw in 2008, and of course trying to avoid the sort of bailouts that happened there. So it's the Bank of England's turn today at midday. We'll know how they've moved on interest rates. Does the Fed pressure them to do more? Yes, it most certainly does, according to the markets. But remember, even though the inflation is set to be 10% by the end of the year here, 2%, this is the Bank of England target, has always been a medium-term market target. Now, whether or not they rise to this, I do not know, because I won't be at the press conference. I'll be talking to Rotus with a bit of a luck later on. However, what the Bank of England has to do today is to say, OK, inflation will overshoot the target. It is overshooting the target right now. But in the medium term, and medium term usually in financial markets means between 18 months and 2 years, they have to say that they will be getting inflation as a result of what they do today. And of course, in future months, getting that down to the target of 2%. But that's a long, long way away and a lot of pain. Adding to which, from the Groceries Confederation, UK summer prices, food prices will be rising very, very quickly indeed. I think we know all that. And I think also that people are actually shifting away from slightly more expensive supermarkets to the cheaper ones. My wife and I were talking last night about the rise of pound stores, for example. And all this talk about inflation, this is a big question, isn't it? Do we actually raise interest rates to fight inflation? Does it actually work? I mean, these are big questions. It does as far as monetary policies are concerned, but in real life, does it work? We've got train strikes coming up, of course, next week. UK passengers have been told to avoid the railways altogether. There will be a few trains running between the hours of roughly about 7:30 to 10 o'clock in the evening, but generally speaking, passengers have been told to walk away and probably not go to work. What that means for the rail industry as a whole, very, very difficult to tell, because, as you know, we're still going through, just like all countries are, whether we actually go to the office or not, whether hybrid working will actually start. And finally, to the oil markets. Now, the oil prices slightly declined yesterday, the crude demand taking a bit of a shock from all the usual kind of reasons, including the US consumer. But President Biden was talking to the retail providers to the gas pumps yesterday, saying, if you're making all these profits, why is the price not coming down? I think most people are looking at this and saying, yeah, nice to be able to be seen to be talking to them. Does your election prospects good? In the long term, does it help? Probably not. However, so therefore, with all that, the price declining very, very slightly, but in Asian trading hours, buyers took advantage of that. I'm looking at Brent crude now about 119 and WTI about 116. That's the global view.
Michael, great point, and I'd like to have that debate. Does it really work? Some will say it works. If you're a Paul Volcker from the 80s, you say the shock therapy did work, but there's another part to it. It creams off purchasing power parity, like it's doing in America now. Home mortgages are on the increase. Now, obviously, mortgages over 30 years are benchmark, obviously, but for lower tenured mortgages, they're now on the increase, and that's increasing how much people have to pay because it's ramped up their costs and the likes. And most of those costs you want to nullify, like cost of petrol and the likes, with interest rate going up, it's harder to do business. And that's the problem here. So let's have that debate.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. The fact of it is, isn't it, that if you're look, we all live in the developed Western world. We live in consumer-led societies. If a consumer's not spending, whether you like it or not, however much you decide what kind of society you want to live in, the fact of the matter is, it's about consumers and consumer confidence. Unfortunately, that is the way it is. Anything which cuts away at that, which includes higher interest rates, and you quite rightly identify all the fixed costs that will go up as a result of that, not just mortgages, but energy as well, all those kind of things we've been talking about for weeks. Does that actually stop you thinking about spending? I would suggest, yes, it does. And I would suggest that I'm not really talking just about the poor part of the population that can't afford the price increases in any case, but I'm talking about what they call in this country the squeezed middle classes, who are saying to each other, do you know what, we're not going to go on that holiday anymore. We might stay in the country or we might not. We have to explain that we simply cannot afford it for the medium term. As I say, the Bank of England's job today, interest rates will go up here, absolutely unquestionably. It's a question of whether it's 1/4 or 0.5%. As I said, the Fed was very aggressive yesterday. But exactly, I couldn't agree more with you. It's really do higher interest rates. I know that they are the base rate of the base of monetary policy, but do they actually help? Are we not hiking into a slowdown? I think we probably are. But central bankers tend not to live into that kind of world. I can't see why not. I'm mystified by it.
Okay, two quick issues. Are you guys coping in Britain? Petrol is about to hit £100 per tank. Food supplies may be threatened from next week. Cost of living crisis is not abating. And there will be the biggest rail strike from June 21 to 26 next week. What is the worst that we're likely to expect? Now, the Bank of England today, is going to announce its fifth interest rate hike since December. Will it be over 1%? What's your projection? And then what the Federal Reserve did yesterday, will you consider that an abrupt pivot, 0.75%, 3/4 percentage points rise, different from what the Federal Reserve had done from since March, when it focused around 0.50%. How much will it get? With growth in the U.S. economy projected at within the range of just 2% this year.
Well, we've just been talking about this, haven't we? I mean, with Rafai, I mean, the point is, why are we raising interest in the market? The markets actually like it because they feel as though a big stand is being taken against inflation. I add to my point, and exactly what we've just been discussing. What does it actually do to the consumer? And is the consumer an important part of the economy? That's that question. Unfortunately, whether you like it or not, is yes. And does that affect people's spending? Yes, it does. And does that affect business? Yes, it does. So everything is pointing towards hiking these rates into a slowdown. Now, the question, therefore, is if you're hiking rates into a slowdown, when do you expect that slowdown to reduce its slowing? And again, who knows? And where will interest rates be by the end of the year? Well, according to what they're saying in the United States, it could be 3.5% there by the end of the year. As far as the UK is concerned, 2.5%. But I wouldn't like to be bound by those kind of figures because I have no way of predicting, nor has anybody else accurately, what's actually going on. Of course, if you're technical, you could look to the bond markets and see how they're pricing bonds further into the future. I would suggest that nobody really knows. I don't think there are answers to that kind of thing. The solution, one of the ways of combating this, there isn't a solution. One of the ways of combating it is simply to gird your loins and spend less, close the purse strings, and cope with the fact that luxury is for the moment not something that one would want to afford. We just need to get by over the remainder of this year and see where we are at the end of the year. That would be, I think, what most people are thinking right now. As far as the train strikes are concerned, well, look, so you have an opposition party, the so-called Labour Party, that is not coming out either for or against. The individuals are, but nobody's coming out for or against the rail strike. Now, Labour is supposed to be for the workers. Now, I'm a worker, you're a worker, we're employed by somebody. It's not just about people who are not that well off and working, it's for everybody. What do the trains do? Do the trains take people to work? Yes, they do. Figure that one out for me. I've got no idea. What I do feel is, I think that after these strikes actually happen, and I have also told you yesterday that it's likely that another union will be joining in to start more strikes, maybe in July, that the management are not going to give in to this. Unfortunately, it may be that the rail industry is rapidly reshaped by this. I think that's what's going to happen. More of us work at home. I'm not on a train right now. I'm working from home, as most people are, and most people will continue to do that. Will the train strike have the effect of inconveniencing millions of people? Yes, it will. Will they be working from home? Yes, they will. What will they be doing in future? Will they be thinking about less of the train journey and more about working from home? Yes, they will. So I think that big changes are afoot.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Our dependable Rosa Sadiri is here now to give us an African business update. Good morning, Roses.
Hi, good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, look, I think at the end of this year, Google is going to give out, or rather let everyone know what the most searched item or most searched word was for that particular year. I think inflation is going to be that particular word because... day after day. Anyway, inflation figures for Nigeria, 11-month high, whether it's global news or African news, inflation keeps coming up. 11-month high, 17.71. The year-on-year numbers that we saw in May for Nigeria, up from 16.82% in April. Look at food, 19.5%, up from 18.37 in April. Core inflation, 14.9. Urban inflation is where we saw the second highest rise apart from food, 18.24. Rural inflation, 17.2. Month on month, same story. Increases across the board. Headline inflation 1.7, food inflation at 2%, core inflation 1.87, urban 1.8, rural 1.76. Mostly, this diesel issue is what is, we're seeing fuel, we're seeing food, we're seeing those two particular pressure points in the baskets being impacted most. But look, if diesel is going up by 200% and flour is going up by 60-70%, we should flow into prices of bread. Is inflation at 17% or is it higher? So there's a discussion to be had as to whether or not the Bureau of Statistics needs to rejig its basket, because when you look at the different items that we have to, it's particularly transportation and food, the impact is it's more than what the 17% print is suggesting. It's particularly high. Yeah. The World Bank. This is that we're talking about power now. The World Bank is saying that Nigeria needs about $100 billion over the next 10 years in order to upgrade power infrastructure. We talked extensively about power yesterday. This sounds like a lot of money. At the official exchange rates, which hit 420 yesterday, that's about 42 trillion naira, right? If you use the parallel market, that's about 60 trillion. But if you had a really, really deep capital market, you could raise this money. Our exchange is $60 billion, so $40 billion away from this. You probably need more. Look, use the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, for instance. That's a $1 trillion exchange, which is 10 times this amount. Theoretically, if you had a really deep capital market, you could go out there, float a bond, and probably raise a significant amount of this money in order to get your infrastructure to where it needs to be. How we raise this money, I guess, we throw this to the next administration in 2023 to ask them. So this is it. If I would, ask any other aspirant, and you really, what's the name of the candidate that came on yesterday? SDP.
SDP.
Yes, the SDP candidate. I remember Rufai was grilling him on debts and interest rates and so on. So that's a question that needs to be asked for any candidates coming on. Where are you going to get $100 billion over the next 10 years to revamp Nigeria's power infrastructure? That's something that needs to be asked. From there to diesel, the oil marketers, particularly the president of one of the oil marketers, is saying that diesel prices could hit 1,000 naira to 1,500 naira. Mr. Kenneth Okorie, I believe, Bennett Okorie is his name. And essentially, he's saying that something needs to be done. But I'm wondering what on earth he's referring to, because it's deregulated. I'm looking for his quotes here where he was actually talking about what needs to be done. Yeah, he says, and it is not that the fuel is not there, but the cost of bringing it to the stations is too high.
Forex.
We know, right? Yeah, we know that the crisis between Ukraine and Russia has contributed badly. But okay, this is the thing. But the government has to do something fast. Otherwise, we're going to buy diesel in the next 2 weeks at 1,000 to 1,500. Well, what? It's deregulated. What is he suggesting that they do? Subsidize it? How? Look, if diesel goes to 1,000, 1,500, then businesses are just going to shut down, and people, or you won't buy diesel, you switch to petrol or something else. So I'm not really sure what he's suggesting, but as Rufai has already said, foreign exchange is one of the major components, because this is imported. So, but what are you asking for? An FX subsidy, or what is it? Anyway, finally, the Afri-Exim Bank spring annual meetings is taking place in Cairo. Our very own Bosun Omofaye is boots on the ground in Egypt, covering that. And so that's going to be going on for the next couple of days. And yeah, we'll be getting some news out of there.
I just really want to talk about that. You always have a problem. You see, so when people say we're free market capitalists,
yes,
we should be careful, because also free market capitalism should have some level of controls.
Okay.
It's been deregulated.
Yeah, it is.
It's been deregulated, but the participants in the market do not have control over the forex market, which should be stabilized by the CBN.
But when you say stabilized, you mean more supply?
No, I'm saying stabilized by the CBN in terms of monetary policy.
But you're talking about FX now.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Stabilized by the CBN in terms of making good monetary policy decisions across board.
Yeah, but how does that impact FX?
How does that impact FX?
For the players who are supposed to import the product into the country.
This is how it impacts FS. If the decisions are great, if there is supply, if we can stabilize the market, we will not have this rise like we have because politicians are now looking for FX and the dollar just went all of a sudden from 580 something to 6 something.
Right.
You cannot exonerate the fact that the dollar increased because of this politics pool of the markets. And that's what these suppliers are facing now. We've not had a very cohesive and stable rates. The INE window they talk about, you talk about 420. Rotus, please don't ever mention that rate again.
Where's the official rate?
Go to the banks, Rotus.
I get what you're saying.
Go to the banks and see if you're going to see at that rate.
Right.
Somebody was talking about, come on, 2,000. You can't even get at the banks. So those that bring in products will still have to go to that black market to get at 6 something.
Right, to imports.
So look at the rate from 580 something at the black market to 6 something in the space of 2 weeks. And even at 6 something, we're talking about the same thing is happening for aviation fuel today. I'm sure very soon aviation fuel people too will say they want to jack up rates.
In fact,
and they want to jack up airfare rates.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the policies. It goes back to the production capacity. It goes back to the viability of our economy. It goes back to the CBN making those decisions. But in all fairness to the CBN,
they don't print dollars.
They don't print dollars.
Right, so it's a supply issue.
They can't make that decision alone.
Right.
They don't make the production capacity of a country grow. They don't make a country output grow.
See, now we're here.
But to a strong extent, it still goes back to the decadence in our economy as we speak today.
Okay, inflation. You are reporting through the MBS that inflation is already 17.71%.
Correct, yep.
Food inflation is about 18.6%. 19%. Yeah. Okay. So that's the trend globally.
Upwards.
We have seen Federal Reserve in the US taking a decision, the highest benchmark rate rise in almost 40 years that the Federal Reserve, the US Central Bank, has ever attempted. Today, the Bank of England is also going to raise interest rate.
Yep.
What is the Nigerian government going to do? We've seen a shift from its traditional accommodative stance. The question is, what is the solution? In Sri Lanka, where food inflation has risen by over 56%, people are now being told to stay at home every Friday to go and plant fruits and vegetables so that they will be able to feed themselves. So it's not enough for us to describe the problem. What is the solution? What is the reaction from the policy end? Now, second, diesel. Now, there's a group called the Natural Oil and Gas Association of Nigeria. Nogasa,
yes.
they call themselves. So, yes, they've said diesel price may go up to about from 800 naira per liter to 1,500 naira per liter. The president of Nogasa cited this issue of forex. They don't have access to forex. They have to buy from the fuel market. But he provided a solution. And his solution is that the government of Nigeria should raise the price of fuel and diesel. That there is no other way around it. Because otherwise, 75% of filling stations in Nigeria will stop selling diesel. And if they stop selling diesel and we are dependent on imported diesel, then we're in trouble. I quoted on this same program 2 days ago reports from ExxonMobil and also British Petroleum about how the refineries are minting money because these companies also have refineries. And they say refining is a very profitable business in the face of the global supply disruptions that you have in the world at the moment. And yet we have refineries in Nigeria that are not working. So we go back to the same issue about distortions within the system. Now, you quoted another story that we will need about 100 billion, right?
According to the World Bank.
According to the World Bank, right? to address the challenge of, is it electricity?
Power, yep.
Electricity.
Yes.
Okay, where is that 100 billion going to come from?
Exactly.
Borrowing. Who borrow more money? Because our Minister of Finance said the other day that, okay, we face a fiscal crisis because we just have to borrow. We don't have any option in the matter. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission was quoted in the papers today as saying that by July 1,
power will improve.
There will be improvement in power supply. We will have up to 5,000 megawatts. Now, some of these government officials, where did they get them from? Do they read at all? You know, he's boasting about 5,000 megawatts for a country of over 200 million people. And he says there is now a contract that have been signed along the value chain, Genco, transmission, and also the discos. And that anybody that breaches the contract that has been signed will be fined. That penalties have been defined. Well, I'm waiting for July 1 to see whether this fellow, what's his name, Garuba, or whatever level of of information he has that is not available to us, and this contract that has been signed along the value chain to give Nigerians an insulting 5,000 megawatts. In the meantime, still talking about the problem. They had the National Aviation Conference yesterday. We're told it's the first of its kind in Nigerian history. And what came out of it? Alan Onyema, who was the spokesperson for the airline or operators of Nigeria, and Obiara Okonkwo, who is the owner of Global United Airlines. They both thanked the federal government, that the federal government had promised to make 100,000 liters of aviation fuel available to them, but that it is not working. And that 70 airlines in Nigeria over the recent period have shut down. And that 3 more national aviation operators in Nigeria will still shut down. So our agony is writ large. Whether you are talking about supply of electricity or diesel or the aviation business. So that is how serious the Nigerian situation is. And I hope all these people going around, they want to be president, they are looking for running mate and all that. I hope they are reading the literature and using their brains to see that it won't be easy to be Nigeria's president. You must have a brain that works, and you must be ready to do the work.
Indeed, indeed.
Feeling particularly fragile this morning, and you've made it a lot worse with these awful stories.
I'm so
sorry. I want to go back to inflation.
Yes.
And just the horrors we're facing there. How accurate are these numbers? I actually don't believe them. 17 point what?
Yeah.
I think it's more like we're in stagflation territory of like 40% inflation. There's no way it's 17.7%, right?
Yeah. Remember when I talked about Ghana, and Ghana's at 27 now. I quoted an analyst who's been on the Global Business Report. He was like, look, it's about 35, 40 if you actually come down to what Ghanaians are facing there. So on the ground, it looks like a lot of these Bureau of Statistics, whether it's in Ghana, South Africa, they need to rejig their baskets because it's more
I think their modelings are moribund.
Right.
And
they need to update them.
And you can't even trust the statistics.
And the funny thing is, inflation now pretty much feels like weather. You know, when they say it's 17 degrees, but it feels like 30 degrees.
Aha, good analogy. Yeah.
So that's the way it is now. So it is way more than this, and it is biting deeply. And guess what it's doing? We're not looking at the numbers. The poverty numbers are beginning to increase again.
Yeah, the World Bank said 6 million more Nigerians will fall into poverty.
Already over 100 million, half of the population of this country are already in poverty. Then the number starts to creep up again, 6 million thereabout. Most homes now can't afford 1 square meal.
They skip a meal.
That's the benchmark now. They can't even afford to have a meal. And that's it. So when you look at what makes up our basket, then you know it is absolutely problematic with the forest crisis, which is predominantly caused by this political class.
Well, I don't judge poverty rates in Nigeria by MBS figures. Okay? These voodoo statistics that they go about. I judge by the pandemic of empty pockets that I have to deal with in my own pocket. Right. And that I have to deal with in terms of the pressure from extended family, perpetually putting pressure on me.
Pleasure to have you back for updates on COVID-19 pandemic. Adeso Omora is here with us. Adeso, great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Great to be here. Morning. Good to see you. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Dr. Bati.
Morning.
Morning. Morning. Well, globally, the number of new weekly cases of coronavirus has continued to decline since we saw a peak in January of this year. Well, during the week of 6th to the 12th of June, over 3.2 million coronavirus cases were reported across the world. And after 5 weeks of decline, we cannot say the same thing for the casualties, as the number of new weekly deaths have risen again, with over 8,700 fatalities reported, and that's a 4% increase from the previous week. At the regional level, the number of new weekly cases increased in the Eastern Mediterranean region by 58%. In the Southeast region, Southeast Asia region, 33%. And in the region of the Americas, we saw an increase in deaths by 13%, while it decreased in the other 3 WHO regions, including Africa. And of course, I think I mixed that up. That figure was for the increase in cases. For the decrease, we saw in 3 regions, including Africa. But when it came to the number of deaths, we saw increases in the regions of the Americas by 21%, in the Western Pacific region by 17%, and of course we now saw those decreases in 4 other regions of the WHO, including in Africa. So the deaths are on decline in Africa and 3 other regions, but when it comes to cases, overall we're seeing a decline globally. Here in Nigeria, what are the figures saying? Well, the latest weekly report shows that testing continues to decline. A little above 15,000 samples were tested in the last reported week, and that's from 28,000 conducted in the previous week. Now, out of those 15,000 plus samples, 267 came back positive. That's 1.7% in the last reported week. Now, to the next slide, if my producers can. This slide shows the curve of reported cases from the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 here in Nigeria. So far, we have experienced 4 waves. If you can see on the next slide, which shows you the curve chart. We've had 4 waves, where you have the highest peak was during the 4th wave between December 2021 and January of this year, as indicated there on your screen. In April, we almost didn't see any movement, but it started to pick up again in the last 2 months. I'm talking about May and June. You see some movements there in green. I also thought to bring you this next slide, which shows the current state of testing across the approved private and public labs in the country in 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. They are either not testing or not reporting their data. That slide shows you states and registered labs, their names. It also indicates whether they're testing or they're not testing, or if they're reporting their data. Majority of them are not testing, and those that are testing, the NCDC says they are not reporting their data. It is safe to say, with all of this information, that we are increasingly blind on COVID-19 transmission with less testing here in Nigeria. So you might see some people moving around with cough and cold, itchy throat. We're not sure what they have. Nobody's testing and nobody's reporting. But let's take a look at the vaccination drive against COVID-19 in Nigeria. So far, the NPHCDA says 25.2% of the targeted eligible population have been partially vaccinated in the country, while 18.5% have been fully vaccinated. It's still a far cry from the 70% we're targeting for the end of this year. Quickly to the U.S., where the chief medical advisor to President Joe Biden and the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has tested positive for COVID-19. The 81-year-old is fully vaccinated against the virus and has also been boosted twice. So in all, he's had 4 shots of a coronavirus vaccine. Well, he's said to be experiencing mild symptoms and will continue to isolate and work from home. His agency is reassuring the public, the American public, that Fauci had not recently been in contact with President Joe Biden or any senior government officials. Meanwhile, an outside panel of advisors to the US FDA, that's the Food and Drug Administration, has voted unanimously in favor of Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for the youngest children 6 months to 5 years old. Now, the vote was 21-0 in favor of this. The FDA and the CDC would then weigh in officially, and if they do, that will make vaccine for the youngest age group available potentially as soon as next week. Back to you guys.
With regards to Dr. Fauci, there used to be a time, I'm sure you recall vividly, that if an 81-year-old caught COVID, it was pretty much a death sentence. So that's thanks to modern medicine and innovation, that is no longer the case. So we hope he recovers speedily. Even the U.S. Health Secretary, Xavier Becerra, is on his second bout of COVID. Thank goodness for modern medicine once again. There's the vaccinations, there's treatments. We've come a long way since the onset of this awful pandemic. But with regards to Moderna being the jab of choice for children, what has been done with the concerns about heart complications, especially in younger males? I mean, is it safe for young boys at this point? We don't know, because, there was talk of myocarditis, pericarditis. Have those concerns magically disappeared?
Not really, Tundu, but we know that the scientists have been saying that these concerns remain. They are there. However, the benefits outweigh the risks. And when you look at the population of those affected to the larger population, they feel it's safer to have these kids jab. There remain a sort of hole in the blanket of protection when it comes to vaccinating the population, and they'll rather go ahead with that.
Well, the U.S. authorities, the FDA in particular, and the CDC, trying to approve Moderna for children between 5 to 17. They have something to rely on. Before now, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines, have been made available for children within that age range, 5 to 17. And what I've been observed is that about 30%, are the ones who are fully vaccinated. Just about 60% have at least taken one dose. The concern about myocarditis and pericarditis, heart inflammation, particularly in younger males, is simply left to the discretion of parents. Because at the end of the day, the statistics that they have seen with Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine is simply that some parents will just say, no, I won't allow my child to take this. But that is the situation in the United States. And we're expecting that by Saturday, by this weekend, the decision will have been taken one way or the other by the outside advisors to the FDA. But of course, that the dosage for children is lower than that for, adults as administered in the United States. Yes, Anthony Fauci, the face of the war against the pandemic in the United States, 81 years old, yes, is now in isolation. But we've had the case of the Health Secretary, Severa. We've also had the case also of the Canadian Prime Minister, Trudeau, who, after attending the Council of America's meeting, also came down with the virus. However, the infection. However, what we have seen generally is that countries across the world have been relaxing their rates. Even in Nigeria here, where you have raised some concerns in terms of the situation report. The average, the case fatality rate, CFR, is just about 1.2%, which is also the same with what exists globally, which is also just about 1.2%, despite the fact that we've recorded in total since 2020 up to about 6.346 million cases of death. However, the challenge in Nigeria is that Nigeria at a point launched a program for intensive vaccination. And they did that, markets, rural areas, getting access. But despite all of that, just about 18% of the population has been vaccinated. The target of 70% by December 2022 may not be met. So what we can just ask for, yes, we've been lucky so far, but government can possibly do a lot more with this mass vaccination program. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel. They have, a much better coordination with regard to this in Ghana. And Nigeria has been talking about going to the markets, going to filling stations. They just need to study the example Nesor in Ghana. But relatively, I don't think that the situation has been a tragic one here in Nigeria. Even in Saudi Arabia, they are relaxing restrictions. About 850,000 pilgrims, the first set arriving from Indonesia. You know, what we're told is that in Saudi Arabia, you don't need to use masks indoors. But if you visit sites, the holiest sites in Mecca and Medina, then you may be required to do so. So each country has its own pattern. But here in Nigeria, we would like to see a situation whereby a lot more is invested so that all of us can be safe.
All right. Thank you so much, Adesola, for your time.